Hey, yo, what it is, y'all? Let's get right into it. We got to start off today with just builds, because not like full builds. I'm not giving you full POBs for everything that's featured in this video. Not yet. Not because they aren't made, but because I want to refine them some more and give them like a proper spotlight, right? Try to give all of these proper spotlights in this video and make this video over an hour long. And while some of you might like that, YouTube hates that. So we're not going to do it that way, right? But I want to get ideas out there, because with Hexblast catching the fucking boot and the possibility that the same thing can happen to us with Penance, Dissipation, or other popular skills, I just want to start hedging bets ahead of time, right? Let's just prepare some ideas, talk about them ahead of time, and then, you know, if worst doesn't come to worst, cool. We just have new ideas for things that could actually be worth playing, because I'm just saying, Explosive Concoction was good all league numerically, right? And it just took till the end of the league for people to realize, yo, wait a minute, we should have been doing this the whole time, right? And so, who knows? Let's get into it. Remember, these discussions do not account for like any of the Sanctum changes, and that's literally just because I don't think they're going to affect playability of the content. Just loot, that's a separate problem. It'll get into a separate video whenever we find out what the Sanctum changes are finally. Number 1 on the list, Penance, Dissipation. I don't think anyone's surprised by this, and I think like literally it's the most obvious thing to have on this list. Until I see patch notes that say Penance, Dissipation is dead, it's gonna be number 1. And the ascendancy of choice for this is going to probably be Hierophant. I was extremely impressed with its performance when I played it in BPL, BPL 15 last league. One of the 3 BPLs that went on during Settlers League, right? The first of them. I have a video here on the channel talking about my experience with the character and how ridiculously loaded it is. And a couple things come to mind when I talk about how potent that character felt. 1, Sign of Purpose has an incredible interaction with Penance, Dissipation. Just really backloading backloaded potential is really strong on a skill that ramps up over time, and that they work out perfectly together. 2, the ability to use something like Conviction of Power with Arn's Anguish makes use of an underutilized belt for an incredible damage source. That surprisingly you can get rid of if you want to use like Annihilating Light. I was in BPL when I did this, so I didn't factor in Annihilating Light. And personally, I don't like using Annihilating Light if I can avoid it, but the option is there. I just like cast speed too much, right? We're also getting the Arcane Surge buff coming, right? The support itself, which gives us another really high value support on the character, because we are just a Hierophant and always have Arcane Surge anyways, as well as Arcane Surge actually giving more cast speed and making us consider adding Arcane Surge buff effect to the character in more detail. All of those things together make you really think, yo, Hierophant was already the wave. It's definitely the wave going forward. It also it's pretty resilient to the Relikesh's nerfs, as you'll see from that BPL video. It actually doesn't mind as much, and I'll have a separate section when I talk about these builds in particular. If they used Relikesh previously, they'll have a section about using Relikesh versus not using Relikesh and how that actually impacts us there. Other options for Penance, by the way, Assassin, Inquisitor, Elementalist are all perfectly fine as well if you prefer the other ascendancies. I just find that they're all worse. Just point blank in the period, I think they're all worse than Hierophant. I think the damage of Hierophant is just notably better. I think the quality of life of Hierophant is better. I think the progression of Hierophant is just better. Really is just like that, everything about these other ascendancies is whack. Hierophant is the real motherfucking ascendancy. Now, some small notes. You technically can Forbidden Flesh and Flame Sign of Purpose onto an Inquisitor, but you would get more value out of playing a Hierophant and Forbidden Flesh and Flaming Inevitable Judgment over to a Hierophant. An Elementalist does also have something of note, which is that I'm intrigued by the Golem setup potential, and I will love to see if somebody does anything with that. I just personally don't think it's worth digging too much into, and I hate the reliance on exposure that it has. Really puts you on a clock until you actually have exposure gloves before the character starts to feel good, so to speak, right? Those are just thoughts on Penance. Still an insane skill, obviously. Any of these ascendancies, you can't go wrong. Number 2 on the list, Icicle Mine. And if you're thinking, why Icicle Mine? It's because this has always been my favorite skill. It's one of my favorite skills for far too long. And, well, I just saw something in the patch notes when they came out, and I was like, oh, baby, it's there. I have to talk about it a little bit, right? I can't not talk about the fact that Saboteur is getting the node from Blind Prophet, right? The 50% chance for your projectiles to return to you. and then having them fire in random directions. In other words, 50% of a Nimbus, insanely strong to think about for a Ascendancy passive that is effectively just 50% more damage for these builds in the like that they can put it in. And Icicle Mine is a perfect skill for it. You could also even use the crit node in the back that Sabo's getting, although I think more of the focus is on the projectile node. Something of note about Icicle Man Saboteur compared to like Assassin, which is also on this list, is that I do think Assassin has significantly higher damage. But I like Saboteur because it actually lets me consider the option of playing Icicle Man Saboteur as a real character now, and then also just removing some strivability on it later on when I want to transition it into Sanctum, because I do think if you want to just go pure Sanctum, Assassin might give you more damage. Just Forbidden Flesh and Flame, the Sabo node, because then you don't even have to put on Nimbus to activate that level of power, because Nimbus is already an item that Icicle Mine characters were using anyways. And in case you're curious, Icicle Mine of Fanning does have its fan overwritten with the random direction of Nimbus. It's a perfectly fine interaction. We like that. Alternative, by the way, you can also go Deadeye. Deadeye also feels fantastic. I've done it in, I believe I did it in 323. BPL is when I played Icicle Mine Deadeye, and I was very, very happy with his performance. And that was a non-life stacking version. I'm pretty sure a life stacking version is actually better. Which granted, I think I could consider life stacking on all three ascendancies here. I'm just stating that like I've done this without life stacking, and I think doing it with life stacking, because somehow Wrathpith Glove has avoided yet another nerf. And Shroud of the Lightless is still Shroud of the Lightless. You could absolutely do something insane in that regard, one way or another there. So keep your eye out for Icicle Mine. I think the skill is going to be absolutely insane. I'm always a fan of any time that it like gets to shine. Next up, I have Shockwave Totem. I don't have a really long section for this because I don't have to talk about multiple ascendancies for this. It's Hierophant. There are no other ascendancies. Like I could pretend that you could play it on, like, yeah, you can play it on Elementalists, you can play it on a couple other things. There's other reasons, but it is really, really hard to pass up on the totem specific benefits that Hierophant gives you, unless you need something specific, mechanically. And Shockwave Totem doesn't need anything specific mechanically. It just needs to be converted to cold and have Astral Projector. Which, something of note, by the way, is that we're getting those rune grafts, and there was the rune graft of Nova Craft or something like that, that allows you to project your Ice Novas. Just as if you had Astral Projector on, which means that the build gets its ring slot back, which does open up some options for some higher damage rings in that spot. So, you know, that's always exciting. But otherwise, I mean, the skill just has done good damage, has been strong. The last time I covered it on this channel, if you're curious, you can look back to my video from Tota. It's actually one of my first, it was my first pop-off video on this channel, actually, talking about a 10-div Shockwave Totem that I played back in Tota. And the only difference from back then to now is that Heat Shiver got nerfed, and pretty much everything else is relatively the same. And so that character is still absolutely insane, and I would totally look into it, especially with the potential of easier crafting of totem shields and whatnot due to the Shaper Exalted Orb being added. I've heard that there's a craft there that I should be looking into, which I got to go find some more details on. So be excited for that as well. Huge fan of Shockwave Totem, always have been. It's got a little bit of a jinky progression until you have the ring or the rune graft at this point, depending on how rare it is. But once you have it, beautiful. You can always just play a different totem skill, right? You can always just play like Stormburst totems or Divine Ire totems, Arc totems, Spark totem, whatever you want to do. You can even just play a regular Selfcaster on Hierophant. Hierophant's a pretty flexible ascendancy. That's for a different video though. All right, number 4 on the list. This one's going to sound a little bit cooked. You just have to stick with me on this. Sunder. Yes, Sunder. In the weeks leading up to the announcement, I spent some time really heavily thinking about Sunder in Sanctum, because I firmly believe that it cannot only be spells that are good in Sanctum. There have to be other skills that are mechanically good enough for Sanctum. So when I started to think about what makes things like TS perform in Sanctum, really the two things that come to mind are coverage and ability to go around walls. And okay, for melee skills outside of LS, it's pretty difficult to go around walls. And well, LS just got nerfed pretty handily in the section that would actually matter for this. So I'm taking out of consideration. But Sunder has a ton of reach. And it's of an archetype that really prioritizes burstier damage profiles. And so it made me wonder if there's a world in which you can get your Sunder damage high enough to actually just insta-pop guards. You can. I've done the numbers for it. I had somebody test it. It's actually beautiful. I'm super excited. I will not probably make a full video about this, but I will, you know, if you stop by the streamer in the Discord and ask about it, I can like share with you some insights about it. I don't want to put the POB out there in full yet, so I'm more confident in the full version of what this would look like. But I've been pretty pleased with the idea of using the slam as just a big nuke. And there are other slams that can fit this category. Just Sunder was the first one that I thought of because I really like the way Sunder feels. And as far as ascendancies, if you're like trying to think about your own, Zerker or Chieftain, they offer slightly different things. I found that Zerker had a better clearing experience. And like in theory, we didn't test it to percentage. We did testing on Zerker, and we found that the numbers were absolutely ridiculous on Chieftain. But and so like there's probably just a word where you forbidden flesh and flame onto one or the other and come up with like the perfect slammer in Sanctum. Really cool idea. Look into it if you're excited. Give me some thoughts if you've like thought about it or whatever, right? Then we have Siege Ballista. And Siege Ballista, this one is not even almost bait. I did some testing for this one actually on stream a week before the announcement, in which we all kind of realized this shit cranks for no investment. And I'm going to kind of just spoil it finally. It's buried deep enough in the video that people who would like spread this around like wildfire wouldn't even watch far enough in here. But we put together like a version of the character that like legitimately might have costed less than 100 chaos or something like that. Like it was ridiculously cheap. The only expensive item on the entire character was Astromentis. And it very easily broke past 1 million or more DPS. Very, very easily ripped apart low-level Sanctums. Because Siege Ballista scales very, very well. It is a deck stacking build, by the way. You use Iron Commander for stacking decks for the quantity of ballistas. The flat fizz is kind of bait, not gonna lie. Like, it's not terribly useless, but it is kind of bait. But you stack flat fizz, that you stack number of totems that way, and then you use things like Poised Prism for the flat per decks and other ways of deck scaling gear and tree and all that stuff to really just skyrocket your damage for the free 99. You can even clear with Barrage on this setup, which I found really funny. And we put this on a Warden because Warden is the most broken ascendancy in the fucking game, I swear to God, and somehow they have not nerfed Tinctures yet. Which, by the way, I forgot to mention Warden for Sunder, but Warden for Sunder is also something I looked at because they still haven't nerfed Tinctures. And if they're not going to nerf Tinctures, I'm abusing them. They are so strong. And it's in the case of Siege Ballista, by the way, because Deadeye cannot use Tinctures at all, Warden is so much stronger than it for Siege Ballista. It's not even close. And you just layer up on the tincture nonsense. You can actually cap your crit super easily, especially early on, by abusing stuff like the skill being flat fizz and not converted at base. If you opt out of using a Herm Sorrow and instead just use like Southbounds, which does work because you will ignite pretty frequently and stuff. But you use Southbound you use Southbound, and then you take the Cold Mastery to convert that fizz to cold, so you still get some of that damage back, and then you just get more flat cold on top. And you leave yourself with some of that base fizz. You can have that base fizz apply bleed and then use the bleed mastery wheel down there that gives like 170% crit chance and 30 crit multi alongside a lot of other ridiculous crit patching stuff that then paired alongside a Rose Thorn Tincture gets your crit chance unbelievably high for how low investment of a character state that was. I would seriously be considering this if you were looking for something funky and weird. Just know that it does involve a little bit of a visual mess at first, getting used to just how many Siege Ballista shots you're going to see. And also, I am intrigued to see if the Transfig version of Siege Ballista will do anything cool for this build. And with those 5 skills talked about, you would think this is over, but I have an honorable mention section. Things that I have not given a ton of extra detail yet because I need some more time personally testing some of these things, and they're more like pet project skills than anything. But I want to mention them here just because, again, like I said, part of the video's goal is to open discussion. Kind of like when I did this video, I did it maybe like 9 months ago or whatever, when I talked about skills and how I rated them in Sanctum, and then gave a list of skills at the end to consider. I have a list of skills here to consider, and just to like open your mind's eye a little bit so you can also give me some ideas. GC of Fissures. With another buff, this skill was already very solid. Another buff makes me think it might actually have some legs. I'm unsure whether or not I would self-cast or put it on a mine yet. But it felt fine either way from previous testing, and probably be self-cast due to some of the mechanical interactions with it on a mine. There's some weird targeting stuff that I'm not the biggest fan of compared to other skills. Cold Snap of Power is a incredibly strong skill that is still not seeing nerfs. Yes, there's the Relicash nerf, but I found that actually shouldn't matter all that much for this build. Just a move away from the like abusing the charge setup if you really want to. Like me personally, whenever playing builds that consume charges, I would prefer my relic cache just to be all power charge so that you can actually always get the full damage benefit of it and just only have it be a consumption or like a resource thing. And so on that line, you would just remove off a badge, get like a really juicy amulet, or even like get yourself a nice focused amulet, maybe even reflecting mist, a focused amulet, right? And really put badge in the dirt anyways. And you'll be perfectly fine. Very, very strong skill there. Spark. With every time self-cast gets buffed, you have to be worried that Spark is right around the corner. This is no exception. If the self-cast buffs are enough, Spark will come back, especially with them also buffing the way intensity works, right? They made intensity fall off not as fast. This is really relevant actually for pinpoint support, which is one of the higher, like better ways to make your clear more potent on Spark. So do not be surprised if Spark finds its way back into the meta for something, right? If the self-cast buffs are actually as good as they are like toting them to be. Crack Lance and Disintegration is one of my more cooked skills, and it's just because numerically the skill has been close, but not quite there for some time, and I'm intrigued if I can get it there, especially potentially as an Ignite build, but you're just going to have to let me cook on that one, right? It's the idea is there. I cannot promise you that it'll function. And the last one on my list of honorable mentions is actually Hexblast of Havoc. In my last video, at the end, I snuck in a bit about how dog shit this skill is, and I still do firmly agree with the skill being significantly weaker than regular Hexblast. But I did this funny bit on stream about like, oh yeah, I just swapped Hexblast to Havoc, and my build goes down by 80%. What the fuck? And then of course, I acknowledge like it's a disingenuous take because the configuration is wrong, the gearing is wrong, right? We're putting it into a character that's not shredding or penning chaos res at all, and all that stuff. And when I did some math for it on stream and then off stream some more last night, I came up with the idea that it's somewhere in the ballpark of about 50 to 55% worse than what we currently have for Hexblast, which is fine, but it does mean that I probably need to look at going poison instead of hit, and I still need to do some more thinking if there's a better way to work through the problems that come with trying to like pen chaos res, because the biggest problem I've running into with that PLB so far, and if you've solved this problem, let me know, is that there are not very many good ways to get around chaos res besides the extremely expensive stuff, right? Like, oh yeah, I just used fucking original sin. All right, bozo, we can't just do that, right? Or oh yeah, like e-shot. Like, there's got to be some good way to like solve this problem, and I just haven't run up against it yet. This is something I'm going to be thinking about some more as well. That was one of the things that really made Hexblast stand out normally, is that you could use like regular elemental pen for it. And with that in mind, that's actually the full list, at least for now, right? Like I said, I gave you 10 skills here. It's far from exhaustive. It's just the skills that I've thought about a lot recently that I've been putting effort towards making work. You'll get, like I said earlier in the video, you will get some of these, not all of these, as full like build videos as the time gets closer. I just am waiting to see some dust settle, and I have some other videos that I want to make, right? If you're just a standing viewer of the channel, you're not only here for Sanctum content, I can tell you that the next video is going to be about Spellslinger, not necessarily specifically within the context of Sanctum, although I will have some notes about Sanctum in there, but more so just about Spellslinger and its revival with this patch, because I'm super excited to see it come back. And then we will talk about a Sanctum League starting guide, and then some number of showcase of like me showing you guys builds and like their POBs and whatnot as we go into the that last week. I'm hoping to get at least 3, potentially even 5. Do not hold me to either of those numbers. That's just like a goal that I'm aiming for myself. Hopefully I do meet it. I don't like to fail my own goals, so maybe I'm hoping that like me saying it to you guys will make me get it done, right? But we'll have a couple of videos actually talking about the builds in detail, which potentially none of which will include my starter because I'm not starting Sanctum, right? But you know the deal. Also, whenever we do get the Sanctum nerf, I will have a video to talk about that, right? And you can even ask me questions in the Discord or on stream. And so to be abreast of all of these things, right, that I just mentioned that are coming up, subscribe to the channel with notifications on is like definitely the most direct way to get it. Or you can join the Discord. There's a bot that pings there as well when my videos go live. You can come ask questions and chat with the community and all that stuff. Stop by the stream, all those things. Those links are in the description. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any build ideas for the Sanctum, please drop them in the comments down below. I just want to see what other people are thinking about. And have a great day. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.